Well, thanks very much. Thanks so much for joining us today on this beautiful autumn day here in Edmonton on Treaty 6 land. We also want to acknowledge the Métis people with their long and deep connection to this land. So the Premier had a press conference today. Awesome. Because there's a lot going on. And we were very excited because we thought, and what we expected, was that the Premier would, talk about the latest on the teachers' strike and come to the table with a real deal that'll end this strike and get students back to school. We thought, perhaps, that the Premier would come to the table and finally take accountability for the corruption in healthcare scandal by publicly releasing the Wyant report and calling for a full public inquiry. Yes. We thought, perhaps, that the Premier would address the fact that non-unionized employees of AHS are being told to take 2 unpaid days off in order to balance the AHS budget. I'll remind you, when that happened in Ontario in the 1990s, we called it Ray Days, and it more or less took down a new Democrat government. We thought the Premier might have something to say about that. We thought the Premier might have something to say about 100 staff being laid off at AHS yesterday. But no, not that either. We thought maybe the Premier paid attention to a standing committee. And she heard that yesterday at the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, we learned that not a single recommendation from the Auditor General on affordable housing was completed after more than a year, and there's $1 billion in deferred maintenance. So people living below the poverty line, living in housing owned by the government, are living in increasingly deteriorating conditions. We thought the Premier might have something to say about that. But no. Instead, the Premier talked to us about license plates, a burning issue, an issue that every Albertan has been craving for change. Come on. Not a single Albertan asked for this. This government has become a parody of itself. We know they love to distract. We call them the, oh, look, a squirrel government. But in reality, this is insulting to Albertans at a time where there is serious crisis, where 51,000 teachers and 700,000 students are not in school where they belong. We have the Premier announcing license plates. Now, I don't want to talk about it, it's just a distraction, but I know you want it, so I'm going to give you 1 minute on license plates. And perhaps we can start with a quotation. A quotation on license plates. All of a sudden, this comes out in the middle of nowhere, taking off the Wild Rose slogan. It's clearly political. People have seen through it. They're outraged and they're responding in massive numbers. We had a poll going with 6,000 respondents so far, most of which, about 70%, say keep the Wild Rose slogan. The province would have been better off asking us if we wanted to change the plates in the first place, as well as if we wanted to change the slogan before moving ahead on their own. Skill testing question. Who said that? Anyone? Anyone? Yes, Sarah Hoffman.
Danielle Smith.
That would be Danielle Smith. So what's changed? What's changed is she thought that the distraction worked for the previous PC government, and she's going to try the same thing. She doesn't even have original distractions anymore. So yeah, let's have an American Idol tournament on a new license plate, but instead, let's get the kids back at school and let's release the Wyant report. That's the real reason we brought you together today. We were hoping that we would have the opportunity to respond to the many, many millions of public dollars funded report from Justice Wyant. A quick reminder. We have had allegations, the likes of which we've never seen in Alberta before, on corruption in healthcare. We've had allegations of kickbacks. We've had allegations of wasted money in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. We've had allegations of sweetheart deals given to friends and donors of the Premier and her party. And remember what it is the government did. They had a report recommending that the RCMP be brought in. And instead, they fired the whistleblower. They fired the CEO of Alberta Health Services. When her board objected, they fired the board. It's 3 CEOs and 2 boards they fired, by the way, since Danielle Smith became the leader. There still is no board of Alberta Health Services. And rather than investigating this, rather than calling in the cops, rather than firing the people, This government has covered up, and covered up. And this is just the latest of that. Another deadline has come and gone. It's been months of delays. I want to remind you all that on March 10th in the legislature, Justice Minister Mickey Amory committed in the legislature on the floor that Justice Wyant's interim report, not his final report, his interim report would be released online on alberta.ca on May 30th. That deadline got pushed back and back and back. Then we heard September 24th. Then we heard, oh, it's not in yet. We heard an interim report was released sometime last week, but that a final report would be released October 15th. That's today. And now we hear that the government needs to review the report. Review. What guarantees do we have is that the report that we're going to get is actually Justice Wyant's words? Why does the government need to review something that the public paid for and deserves to have answers for? These shifting deadlines are absurd. And instead, we have government spending its time, spending resources, spending money, sending its brilliant comm staff to run an American Idol competition on license plates. So we have a simple ask. Release the report now. Don't edit it. Don't review it. Don't prepare your responses. Just release it. For once, Premier Smith, don't take Albertans' brains for granted. Don't think we're idiots. Don't gaslight us. For once, release the report and let Albertans decide. And once Albertans see the report in this incredibly restrained investigation where the judge wasn't allowed to subpoena witnesses, where he wasn't allowed to require information, where he was buried in hundreds of thousands of pages of irrelevant information, where he didn't even interview the former CEO of Alberta Health Services until long after his deadline had come and gone. What was he doing for all those months? We know that this report had such a narrow scope that only a public inquiry will actually work. A public inquiry that could be led by Judge Wyant, but that has the power to subpoena witnesses, that has the power to compel testimony, that has the power and the ability to talk to people who are otherwise bound by a non-disclosure agreement to get to the truth. I've said for months now, there's an easy way out of this for you, Premier. Just call a public inquiry. And the only reason that a government would refuse to call a public inquiry on the largest scandal in its history is if they've got something to hide. So with that, I'm joined here by my brilliant colleagues, Deputy Leader Rakhi Pancholi, our Government House Leader and the lead on our CorruptCare file for so long, Christina Gray, and of course our Shadow Minister of Health, Sarah Hoffman. And we will take any questions on this or on any news of the day. It's been a while since I've been here.
All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. We're going to start in the room. If you're on Zoom and you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and we'll come to you momentarily. And Catherine, no need to get up, I'll come to you. Catherine Gurkowski, All Alberta.
Yeah, thank you. So the Premier did say that she will release this in the coming days, that she hasn't seen it, that yes, she got the interim report, but she doesn't want to prejudge the outcome. So what do you expect to do once the report comes out as opposition, once you read through it?
Well, you know, unlike the Premier, I think when a major report on the biggest issue facing the government comes out, I'll read it. So it completely belays belief that the Premier would not even have read this report. And she claims to have read the interim report, but not the final report, which of course implies that there have been changes asked for by the government between the interim and final reports. That is so shady. And I think Albertans would absolutely have a right to ask what kind of jiggery-pokery, that's a good Nenshi word there, has been going on behind the scenes here. Let's release the unblemished, unedited report. We'll read it and we'll respond to it. And maybe it will actually lay bare the truth of the corruption. That'd be awesome. I suspect the judge will say that he didn't have the ability to investigate what he needed to investigate, or he will call for a full public inquiry, which what we should have done last February. We've lost 8 months already.
And on the teachers, the finance minister said the request for classroom size caps and complexity, as well as some compensation, would cost $2 billion. The Premier said that the NDP tried spending $2 billion and didn't solve the problem. What needs to be done to address complexity, in your opinion?
Well, let's be very clear. So the first point is that this situation has gotten much, much worse in the 6 years that the UCP have been in power. She can blame it on the NDP's short period from 15 to 19, but the fact remains that classroom sizes were much lower during that time period, and that the New Democrat government built or modernized over 200 schools. Meanwhile, with this massive population boom that the Premier helped cause, they have built or modernized only 50 schools. And their much vaunted school construction acceleration program actually doesn't have a single dollar in it in the next 3 years to build a single new classroom. So they're not taking this seriously. And what parents across the province are telling me is, look, this isn't something that, oh, it was way better when I was in school 20 years ago. It was way better when my older kid was in school 4 years ago or 6 years ago. What has happened in public education is shocking. You know, from the teacher who told me in 3 years her classes have gone from 31 to 39 students. That's an increase of 8 students per class times 4 classes equals 32 students. So she's basically teaching an extra class. In the meantime, in her school, the number of EAs, education assistants in her school, have been cut by half. So the most shocking thing that Minister Horner said today is that the teachers have to live in reality. Minister Horner, they live in reality. They live in a reality where the public education system is crumbling, where kids, whether they have special needs or not, are not being served, where learning loss is accelerating, where these kids are going to end up in high school or university without the skills they need in order to succeed. They will not be able to enter the workforce. And that is not because the NDP couldn't solve the problem 4 years ago. It's because the UCP has failed to solve the problem and has chosen to fund public education at the lowest level in Canada.
We're going to go online now. Jack Farrell from CP is first up to ask a question. Go ahead, Jack. Your mic's open.
Jack, are you there?
At least we think it is. Just one sec, Jack. Jack, can you hear? You're muted, Jack.
It always works.
Go ahead,
so well.
Jack. Okay, Jack, we're going to come back to you in a second. Let's see if we can make this work on the next person. Sean Amato from City News. Sean, can you hear us?
Oh, no.
Sean and Jack, do you want to text your questions to me really quick?
Would either of you like to do a song and dance number with me while we're waiting?
Thank you for the offer. I will pass.
Caucus management.
Unless we're doing the new Taylor Swift album. Then I'm in.
The dirty song or the racist song?
So they can hear each other out there, but they can't hear us. So Jack is just writing me a question right
All right.
now.
I haven't heard any of the new Taylor Swift album. And I've been driving. You'd think I would have done something.
It's all we've been listening to in my house. Kids home, Taylor Swift. On.
And Sean, if you want to send me a text message too, I can ask the question for you. So Sean's question came in first. Sean Amato from City News says, the Premier essentially said she can walk and chew gum, do license plates and important things. What do you make of that?
When has she ever done the important things? I don't know what more to say. You know, on education, we're focused on book bans and sex tests for girls, but not boys, over 12. But we're not focused on classroom complexity or size. In fact, I've never heard her talk about classroom size until last week. This government stopped reporting on classroom size because they didn't want people to know. They canceled the provincial achievement tests last year because they knew the grades would be terrible under the new curriculum. They just don't want us to know. So if, in fact, she was having a fun American Idol competition while fixing the other problems, she'd have some credibility. But she's been Premier for over 2 years now, and all she's done is distract. I can't think of a single investment that she's made that has actually improved the quality of life for Albertans in the economy, in the cost of living, in healthcare, or in education. So if she can walk and chew gum at the same time, I'd like to see her blow some bubbles. Let's chew some gum.
Jack, do you want to give it another try, please?
How about now? Can you guys
Yay!
hear me? Oh, there we go.
And we'll give you a bonus question, Sean, if you want to ask a follow-up later. But Jack, go ahead.
Okay, license plate questions too for you. So the premier said it's not a political choice, and I'm just wondering if you think our new slogan for license plate, strong and free. Yes, it's the provincial motto, but it's also true that the UCP has used it in past campaigns as promotional material. Sorry. So my question is, like, do you think the phrase has enough like kind of other connotations that it is political no matter what?
Well, let's
Or is,
start.
like, having a phrase on license plates just a political choice to begin with?
I'm sure it's an absolute coincidence that all of the license plate choices, save one, are blue, which is the UCP's color. By the way, those Calgary Flames and Stampeders and Calgary Stampede fans out there, note. But I'm sure it's just a coincidence that it's all blue, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the logo happens to be the party's motto as well. I will point out, just because I'm pedantic, that Alberta's motto has been there since 1980, and it is not, in fact, strong and free. It's the words that appear on the Alberta crest, which is the Latin fortis et liber, right? So if you wanted to use the motto, you could put the actual motto on rather than the party's motto. Nothing wrong with the words, but it's just so blatantly transparent what they're doing. And as always, the gaslighting is extraordinary. They just think they can get away with this, and Albertans are too dumb to know the difference. Albertans are way smarter than you think they are, Premier. We know exactly what you're doing.
Jack, you have a follow-up?
Yeah. So it was a little difficult to get like a overall project budget number from the minister. He called me after the press conference because I was so confused about it, and he said essentially, like, worst case scenario, this will cost the government $2 million to roll out these plates. The number, like, I'm a bit confused by it because, in 2014, the last time we did this, the provincial government at the time said it would cost about $15 million. So
Yeah,
I was pretty
I remember
surprised
that.
that it was so much lower. But one, do you think that number sounds right? Any concerns there? And two, what do you think of this kind of spending in a budget year when we're seeing multi-billion-dollar deficit?
How can you, in the same press conference, say teachers need to live in reality because the cupboards are bare, but we're going to spend untold millions on this? It cost $15 million in 2014. We're expected to believe this government that wastes money like a government I've never seen before can do it for only $2 million. Alberta's official fish is the bull trout. I don't know if the bull trout is appearing on any of these license plates. I hope it is, because this is fishy as hell.
All right. Thank you very much, Jack. We're going to go to Sean Amato now from City News. Sean, you should be able to go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Sean.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for doing that. We're hearing about back to work legislation being a strong possibility in the coming weeks. What do you make of that? How will the NDP respond to that?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I'm going to let Christina Gray, as a former Minister of Labour and a lead on so much of this, jump in on it. But I'll start by simply saying we will oppose this vigorously with every tool we have. It's not fair for us to have the public stand with teachers, as the public has shown they're doing over and over again, and then say, you know what, forget collective bargaining, we're just going to make them go back to work. It's not right, it's not fair, and most important, it doesn't solve the problem that parents, teachers, and students have highlighted for us. Christina?
Thank you, Leader. And just to add on to what the Leader's already said, our Alberta's New Democrat official opposition believes completely in the right to collectively bargain, that teachers and parents are making this stand because of the conditions that have developed because of the UCP government. In the legislature, putting on my House Leader hat, we will have to wait and see what legislation the UCP introduces. We do have procedural mechanisms. There is practice in the Alberta legislature. And so our official opposition caucus is going to engage in the debate as well as oppose back to work legislation to the furthest extent that we can. So we've got the speech from the throne happening on the 23rd, and business is to begin on the 27th. That's what we're anticipating. And you will see our caucus there ready to talk about these issues.
And Sean,
Thanks.
Sean, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Thanks. Thanks. Just to follow up on this, I have to ask a budgeting question. I mean, it's one thing to say that yes, teachers deserve more and the education system needs more. I guess the question is, Alberta already has a big deficit. How does the NDP propose that Alberta be able to pay for this?
It's a terrific question and an important one. And it's important to remember that the deficit that we now have is the result of enormous fiscal mismanagement by this government. I have never seen a government have a flip from a $9 billion surplus, and what happened to that $9 billion, one might ask, into a $8 billion and counting deficit in 1 year in the absence of, I don't know, a global pandemic. So the mismanagement that we've seen of the budgets by this government are extraordinary. Danielle Smith has increased spending in 2 years by more than Rachel Notley increased it in 4 years. But people aren't feeling that. They're not seeing a difference in healthcare. Instead, we've stood up now 9 new healthcare agencies, each with their own CEO. We have wasted enormous money on the corruption in healthcare scandal. We have wasted $100 million on Turkish Tylenol, and today we're wasting anywhere between $2 and $30 million on license plates. So that won't solve the problem. We can't find all the money with only the UCP's waste. But what we have to do is prioritize. We know that in 2019, a decision was made by this UCP government to systematically defund public education. That wasn't an accident. It didn't happen because suddenly all these immigrants showed up that we weren't expecting. It was a deliberate choice on the part of this government, which is run, let's not forget, by a premier who just before she got back into politics, after she had been a school board trustee, fired, after she had been leader of the opposition, she was not a naive babe in the woods. Just before she got back to politics, she wrote a column saying we should defund and destroy public education, that we should have no more government schools and their government unions. This was a choice, and the premier has made a terrible miscalculation. So look, I had 11 straight balanced budgets when I was mayor of Calgary with the lowest residential property taxes in the country. You can balance your budget and you can focus on the things that really matter.
Thank you, Sean. We're going to stay on Zoom and go to Megan Cobb from Global Calgary. Megan, go ahead. Your line's open.
Hi, thanks so much. Just going back to the Wyant report, I hear the calls to release the report right away, but as of 2 hours ago, the premier said she hadn't yet received that report. I guess just wondering what your response is to that, the fact that the premier hasn't even gotten this report yet, so there's no way that she can release it to the public.
I believe she said she hasn't read it yet. That's not the same as not having received it. Our understanding is that the judge has given that report over to the government today, and we would have expected a quick publish that on the web immediately as soon as the government receives it. Obviously, they're not doing that. The premier also admitted that she read an interim report and presumably asked for changes to it, but we'll never know. And so it's important that this come out immediately. And let's not forget, this was due on May 30th. The Justice Minister told us he would release the interim report on May 30th. We're now October 15th. We know that Judge Wyant didn't even call Athana Mentzes for an interview until well after May 30th. So these deadlines keep shifting, the public money going to this report keeps going up, and the public have every right to know what's in it.
Follow-up, Megan?
No, when we reached out to the province earlier, they were expecting to receive it. So I think there is some confusion as to whether.
If they get it at 5 o'clock and they release it at 5 o'clock, I will not complain and I will read it tonight.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Catherine, you want to bookend this thing?
Yeah, sure. I'll stand up. I think this is a question for Sarah Hoffman, but for whoever wants to hop in. The Primary and Preventative Health Minister released a report on engagement about how to shape the healthcare system, and some of the recommendations were a unified patient-centered system. They want respect and retention of the healthcare workforce, accountability, transparency. I'm wondering if you've had a chance to review the What We Heard engagement report and what you think.
I'll turn it over to Sarah in just a sec here. I will say that I saw that today and I myself went, they did a massive engagement in the middle of the CorruptCare scandal? I completely missed that. But I did read those headlines and, well, they kind of made me laugh. because everything that we're asking for, a patient-centered system, a system of transparency, a system that respects healthcare workers, is 180 the opposite of what this government has provided. Sarah?
Thanks. I'll just say the lead on unity and having a unified patient-centered system. They have absolutely blown up the healthcare system. Today we see another 100 workers in AHS being laid off. A couple of weeks ago, we saw them tell folks who worked for AHS, everyone has to take 2 days off without pay if you're not part of a union, and the government's last-minute attempt to try to balance the budget on the backs of workers, impacting, of course, patient care. You can't have people who help run systems, help book appointments, help make sure that information's uploaded so that people can make good decisions, take time off without it impacting somebody in the healthcare system. I'm not surprised that people say they want healthcare workers to be respected. It's been on signs in lawns throughout Alberta, respect, recruit, and retain. And the government has shown nothing but disdain for folks who are on the front lines, folks who are working so hard to serve one another. When it comes to healthcare, when it comes to education, it's clear that they have a privatizing American agenda. And I'm not surprised that the report says focus on patients, because that's what patients deserve. I'm not surprised it says that we should have a united system and a united front in serving them, but the government's clearly ignored all of that and it wants healthcare to fail.
Yeah, and the part of the layoffs is in IT, and I know the government's bringing in like sort of a digital wallet and health card. The government said, well, it's not frontline workers that are frontline clinical workers that are being laid off. Yeah, you touched on it a bit, but what is at risk by laying off people in HR, in finance, in IT?
Go ahead, Mel.
Sure, I'll start and then we'll turn things back over to Naheed. I'll just say that the government is only acting late, acting erratically, and is wanting Albertans to blame anyone but themselves for their mismanagement and misguided focus. If they actually wanted to focus on making the healthcare system better for patients, they'd be sitting down with workers and making sure that they came up with agreements that everyone could have confidence in. We know that health science members, that people who drive ambulances, people who work in labs still aren't at an agreement. So there's so much the government could be focused on if they actually wanted to make sure that they were putting patients first. Instead, they're trying to find somebody else to blame. And today it happens to be 100 families who are now going to have to figure out how to pay the bills. People who are probably at home trying to figure out what to do with their kids during the day. The government is causing a lot of harm and making things far more complicated and disorganized for the healthcare system and the people who work in it and those of us who rely on it.
I'll jump in just for a moment, and if Deputy Leader Pancholi wants to jump in on this one as well. But, you know, my life experience is in running complex organizations. And this government is a great example of how not to do this. So when you talk to people in these services at AHS, they will tell you that they were told months ago that they had to start firing people and laying people off and reducing their budgets by 15 or 20% because the cost of healthcare is bloating so much because of the setup of all these new agencies. So these are the folks who fall in between, who don't really fit in one of these new agencies. And because of that, they're getting massive cutbacks. But we're also hearing similar things happening in psychiatry, which doesn't really fit in acute care or primary care very well, or in Recovery Alberta, which is where they actually go, but their beds are in acute care. So we're hearing all kinds of chaos in that area. We're starting to hear it in other areas like ambulatory clinics, which again don't really fit in the new AHS model, but live in AHS. And so all of these places that are falling between the cracks are just being told to cut. And you can't do that, you know, at a moment where you actually need, you know, great access to electronic health records, especially because those records now have to be shared across multiple agencies, and you're cutting off IT people at a time when you're embroiled in a CorruptCare scandal and you're laying off people in the legal department. This is all going to come back to bite this government in a very hard way, and it's simply due to incompetence in management. There are ways you manage massive change in big organizations. I've done it my entire career, and it's very clear that this province has no idea how you manage those things. Did you want to add anything?
I just want to add that, you know, our colleagues and Naheed and all of us have been out talking to Albertans for months now as part of our Better Together initiative, talking to them about what matters to them. And when they talk about healthcare, when they talk about public education, not one single Albertan has said to us that they feel that they are better off now than they were 6 years ago when the UCP became government. So when it comes to public healthcare, conversations around laying more people off, more, taking the system apart, and you think about public education, I know we have all been out talking to teachers and parents and students. I'm a parent myself of 2 school-age kids, and my spouse is a teacher, and everybody wants to get back into classrooms. Everybody wants to have a strong public education system. Everybody wants the health care that they need, that they deserve when they need it. They want that good quality of care, but nothing that we're hearing from this government is actually making those outcomes for students, for parents, for people accessing healthcare any better. So all of these pieces are just a constant attack on the public services that Albertans not only hold dear, but that they expect to have in a province as beautiful and as wealthy as our province is right now. So we need to keep focused on Albertans and their quality of life, and that's what the Premier and the UCP needs to be focused on. That has not been their focus for the last 2 years they've been in government under Premier Daniel Smith, but we're here to say to Albertans that we are listening and we're advocating for the things that they care about because we know that they deserve better than this.
All right. Is that it, Kirk?
And that's our time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Mind how you go.